Welcome to the Genesis of the Doctor podcast, where we're taking a journey through the time and space of the history of Doctor Who. I'm Tris,
I'm Joy.
and for today's episode, we're going to be talking about the 7th and 8th serials of Season 2, The Space Museum and The Chase. So, right off the bat, before we even get into a specific episode, I just want to ask you, were you also getting the impression that, the vibes of the characters and their interactions were, really different at this point?
Yeah, they do kind of feel a bit different at times.
I know we mentioned last week that at this point it was known that, Ian and Barbara were going to be leaving, or at the very least, William Russell's like, okay, yeah, I'm done. And I feel like because of that, something about the character interactions and the way they interact was really different for these two serials. In a good way, I think.
Yeah.
But it was noticeably different. Like, they leaned more into Ian being goofy. They gave this kind of fun dynamic for Ian and Vicky in several episodes. And they noticeably started giving Vicky more to do.
Yeah, they did.
So, let's start with the Space Museum. This was a really interesting serial, especially with how it started, because I'm not sure we've really had a serial or any Doctor Who story like this before, where time is just weird.
Yeah, this is definitely the first time where the time travel becomes a plot point more. I think that first episode is a very interesting episode, where it's just you're slowly unraveling the mystery until you get to the end.
Yeah. I love the idea that they're kind of out of sync with time at first, and they're in this weird state of they're there, but they're not actually there, and they're seeing the future while also interacting in present time, but they're not actually interacting at all.
Yeah.
It's this really weird out of sync with time that I don't think they've ever done again. Maybe they've done it some other time in the classics, but I don't think they've ever done it like this again.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Occasionally we get other time travel elements in Modern Who, but not exactly like this.
It makes me wonder if the reception to this was just it was too confusing and they decided not to do it again.
Yeah, I feel like they didn't really explain it that well. They kind of tried to, but it doesn't really make that much sense.
It doesn't.
At the end.
It's an interesting idea, but it doesn't quite make sense, because they then spend the whole serial trying to prevent a future they saw, trying to prevent their future, which was a possible future. But if they were only seeing a possible future while they're out of sync with time and wandering around like ghosts, why is it not showing the future? It was definitely a bit weird. The one thing that I really don't get, even with time, why did it change their clothes? They even made an effort to talk about that. They were just like, oh, our clothes changed. Why? They never explained that one.
I think it was just supposed to be if they arrived normally, they would have changed their clothes.
I guess.
I did like the conversation where it's we've got our clothes on then. Doc says, well, I should hope so.
Yeah. there was definitely some funny moments.
Yeah.
I think the coolest part of it, though, was very early on when they were walking through the sand and the dust, and hey, we're not leaving footprints. And that was kind of the start of the real mystery to it all, I think.
Yeah.
But the Space Museum, as a whole, was a very interesting idea of you have this race that conquered a planet and decided to turn the whole planet into a museum to celebrate their history. But I think what was so weird about it is we didn't really see that many museum exhibits. We saw the Dalek and a couple random pieces of tech, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. They definitely didn't focus on the museum part that much.
Outside of,
it was also,
oh no, we don't want to become part of the museum.
Yeah. I also find it weird how it's they're in a museum and then the rebels show up in the museum and they're just they're just kind of in the same place, but why are they there? It's not really clear as to why they're both in the same building.
Yeah, it's not clear why they're there. I mean, they mentioned like their people were turned into like slave labor and whatnot, so I imagine they were there to try to stop it. But yeah, it was definitely strange. It wasn't explained very well. I mean, Vicky was all for revolution. That was actually kind of funny.
Yeah,
Vicky was like ready to fight and all out for revolution, but why they were at that point and ready to didn't quite make sense.
Yeah. Apparently, this was supposed to be more of a comedy originally as well.
Mm-hmm. It kind of feels like
there were comedic moments. There were comedic moments, but apparently some more were cut out because the script editor didn't want it to be a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, to an extent, it's kind of trying to parody Doctor Who, I feel, because it's like, every time they go to an alien planet, they're starting a revolution. It's trying to make that a bit funny instead.
I guess that's true, yeah. I think, I do appreciate, even though we didn't see too many actual museum exhibits, I do appreciate that they focused in on the Dalek as one of them, almost like a foreshadowing. We're going to see them again. Although Vicky,
and it was so funny.
No, it looks friendly.
Yeah. Vicky thinks it looks friendly, and then the Doctor goes inside and says, "I am the master." Wait a minute. Doctor? What do you mean?
He's just so proud of himself. Like they clearly had a good time filming this one.
Yeah.
Which I think is good considering, some of the cast was about to leave soon and they had to make it work.
Apparently, Jacqueline Hill decided she wanted to leave during the filming of this.
Mm-hmm.
So she hadn't decided yet until now.
That's fair. I mean, so originally it wasn't known if she was going to leave at the same time as Ian then?
Yeah, I guess not. Like, their contracts were having to be renewed at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is why they left.
It also might be a case of learning he was leaving made her decide, okay, yeah, maybe I will too.
Yeah. And I think them leaving together definitely worked better.
Mm-hmm. Well, the only way you could have done it otherwise, and we'll get into it, but the only way they could have done it otherwise is if they actually stuck with the idea of they got separated.
Yeah.
But otherwise, with the Space Museum, I do want to focus in on the villains of this as well. The people actually running the museum. What was their goal? Like, really? Like why?
I don't know.
Like, why is somebody else landing on the planet mean now we have to make them part of the museum? You're not gonna... Like I understand they conquered the planet, and I guess they're feared throughout the galaxy, but they're not trying to stop the Doctor and everyone. They're not trying to take them and learn their knowledge. They just want to put them in their museum. Like that's it. That's your goal.
They definitely don't really make that much sense. Especially because like when the guy was interrogating him, he was like, "Oh wow, it's great to have like another scientist around that I can talk to." And he's just, you don't want to just keep him around then?
Exactly, especially since like for a feared race, all of the soldiers sucked too. Like they were really bad at their jobs.
Yeah, they did.
Like they did not really convey that they were actually all that fearsome, like at all.
Yeah, their costumes also didn't help because they're just like Elvis impersonators, basically.
Yeah,
it doesn't make them seem scary.
The costume department was very lacking this episode. It was, you have a bunch of guys in light clothing and then the rebels in black clothing and like Converse and things like that.
Yeah. I did like the interrogation scene though, where the Doctor just like summons walrus footage, and it's like, "You're not an amphibian, I'm not." And then he shows himself in swimwear. that was good.
Yes, I'm being interrogated. And they can see my thoughts. What am I going to think of? Walruses.
How did you get here? Shows a giant bicycle.
Like, definitely.
He immediately figured that out.
Definitely played into the parody side of things that you were mentioning. Like, just, it was overly comical. It was fun.
Yeah.
But it also made anything serious feel very at odds with the rest of the story.
Yeah. And I mean, they called the bad guys the Morax, which I guess is supposed to be like close to morons.
I guess so, because they weren't the smartest.
Yeah. Also, a fun fact. Yeah. Fun fact I learned is that the actor that plays one of the rebels, he goes on to play Boba Fett in the original Star Wars trilogy.
Really? That's funny.
The guy who plays Tor, I think, who's like the main guy.
Okay, that's funny.
Obviously, he's never seen in Star Wars, but he's in the suit.
He's the guy in the suit, yeah. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty fun. Guy played one sci-fi role and went, I gotta get more.
Yep.
I think, as a whole, the Space Museum's a weird story, because I think there's elements to it that are rather good. The idea, like the fact that they're trying to do something interesting with time and preventing the future. But
yeah.
I do think the humor was rather good. But I think as a whole, it's kind of a middling episode or story to me. It's a middling story.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it had good comedy, but, the plot was kind of not really that interesting after the first episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, the first episode is definitely the highlight.
It is. Because everything after that is, oh no, they get separated. Okay, they gotta get back together. And they're, like, all doing different things. Most, in part because of the Rebels' fault, but also because, for some reason, Ian, Vicky, and Barbara are not very good at hiding at first.
Yeah.
So
luckily they get found by the right people.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, definitely a lot of luck played into that. But I will say, I think the best part of the episode, or of the story as a whole, is the fact that we start to see Vicky doing something. More than just being the damsel in distress. Like, she's the one rallying them into revolution. She's the one that figures out the machine for the vault of weapons.
Yeah, they let her have, like, technical knowledge. She kind of hints at that in the next one, too. Mm-hmm. Where, like, she knows how to, like, fix things.
But it makes sense, right? Nice. Because, like, she was on a spaceship in the future. Like, she definitely knows more. And I think it's great that they're actually leaning into that, because it helps make her more interesting. Now, unfortunately, theoretically, Susan should have been the one to know these things. Not saying Vicky can't.
Yeah.
But with who Susan is, who she is as a character, she should have known these things as well and been this smart. So it's another weird case there. But I am glad they're actually doing it for Vicky and giving her more to do.
Yeah. I think it's also funny to notice just how, like, every single time, it's always the women that get involved in revolution, and then Ian is just out, like, fighting people.
Yep.
And that's just true. Like, every time. It's always that exact same thing.
You got bloodthirsty Barbara's rubbing off on Vicky.
Yeah.
Well, this serial leads straight into, because the ending bit is actually not just a next time on, it actually is like a whole scene first of the Daleks in the chase. And the very idea of this serial is so interesting because it allows them to play with many different sets, going to a bunch of different times, and do a lot more with the Daleks, and the fact that their tech is ramping up. They want vengeance against the Doctor. But it's so funny seeing how the Daleks are so concerned about the Doctor and everyone that they don't care about anyone else. And I don't mean that in a normal way. I mean, like, the Daleks, normally they land somewhere, they wipe everything out, then leave. Here, they only ever acted on self-defense. And I find that really fascinating.
Yeah. They kind of did, like, Keys of Marinus mixed with the Dalek story here, where it's just, we're constantly going to different places, which was interesting. I feel like they didn't really spend much time on any of the places, though, which kind of, I felt like that kind of wasn't the best, where, we go to multiple locations and we're only there for, like, 10 minutes.
That's true, though I do feel like some of them lingered a little too long. The wrong ones lingered too long. New York City, the top of the Empire State Building. Which
the Daleks take Manhattan.
Yeah, that was actually rather fun to see. However, that scene with the man from Alabama, I think, that went on for way too long.
Yeah.
Like, we get it, and I don't just say this as an American. It's more of I feel like we're losing the point here.
Yeah, a little bit. It at least had a bit of comedy to it.
It did.
It went on quite a bit too long.
Yeah, like even like the setup, like it was like 2 minutes of setup for the TARDIS going to land on the top of the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
Like the ship, the ship went real quick, and then it was kind of funny with everyone jumping ship, afraid of the Daleks.
Yeah.
Like that went quick. That one was fun. I think that part was paced rather well. The Empire State Building, for all they did was get out of the TARDIS, say, "Hey, we're on the Empire State Building. Oh, we gotta leave. The Daleks are on a trail." That lasted way too long for all that ended up being. But before they started getting chased, and then we started getting ahead of ourselves there. So first we see the Doctor messing with the machine that he got from the Space Museum. The what was it? The Time and Space Visualizer.
Yeah, something like that.
What a weird machine, because you're a time traveler. You could just go to those. Why would you want to just watch it when you could go experience it? Isn't that your whole thing?
I mean, the Doctor doesn't know how to fly the TARDIS yet, so that kind of makes sense.
That's true.
He doesn't know how to fly the TARDIS, whereas you can ask for a very specific moment and he can show you on this, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's a lot more choice in this matter.
It makes sense not to ever bring that back now, though.
Yeah.
Because obviously now when you want to see the Beatles, the Doctor will just take you to them instead of showing you a picture of them. Or a video.
Exactly.
No, it should be mentioned that in international releases of this episode, they cut out a Beatles clip there.
Oh, really?
Whereas in the British version, there was a Beatles clip there.
That's funny.
Because in international, they only show Ian asks to see Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln's speech, the Gettysburg Address.
Barbara wants to see Queen Elizabeth and Shakespeare, who, I mean, the Doctor will eventually meet them.
Yeah, both, in fact.
And then Vicky asks to see the Beatles and calls them classical music, which is a very funny thing.
That is very funny. And
something that they bring back, too.
It's
true. They bring back, too, for Toxic by Britney Spears.
I kind of love how they do that, though. I kind of love when Doctor Who does that, because it's just that, like, poking fun at space-time stuff.
Yeah.
But this time and space visualizer is kind of a key point to the entire story, because it's how they learn the Daleks are after them. As they land on a weird desert, well, not really desert planet, I guess it's more of it was an ocean planet, and the ocean's all dried up.
Yeah,
this
so
planet
became a desert.
Weird. Like, this planet was weird, but this was the start of really what I meant with Ian and Vicky having, like, a whole, like, actual set of interactions that feel different than what we've had up to this point. Yeah.
I like how they give Ian, like, a TARDIS magnet, which is supposed to bring him back to the TARDIS. I guess these days you just say, like, you just have your phone and your phone can help you get back there.
Yeah, I guess.
But I guess you don't have that you don't have that at this time.
No, I guess. So you gotta do what you can. I mean, it was an interesting device. I wonder if they'll ever bring that up again.
Yeah. I also, like it's also the time where the Doctor goes to use it for the first time ever, and it's like, oh, wait, I gave it to Ian.
Yep. I wonder if Ian ever gave it back to him.
I don't know. I guess they don't really establish that.
No, because they don't ever really touch this thing again in this serial. But
yeah.
So yeah, if you look at how, like, the character interactions between Susan and her teachers were versus Vicky with Ian and Barbara. Ian and Barbara were definitely very caring towards Vicky, like they were Susan. But especially in this episode, you really start to see how different their relations are. Like, you have, like, Ian and Vicky, like, taking jabs at each other. Like in a very comical, like, underground scene where there's, like, the weird giant octopus creatures, and they're like calling each other stupid, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
It was actually pretty funny. I rather liked how this broke up the usual group dynamic, because it's usually either the women together, the men together, or the Doctor with Vicky and Ian and Barbara together. This gave us Barbara with the Doctor and Ian with Vicky, and we haven't really had that much. So we got to see a lot of different interactions. Although I found it really funny how the Doctor and Barbara decided they were just going to sunbathe at first.
Yeah, that was so funny.
Like, wow, they are really just out for leisure at this point.
I love the conversation they had where the Doctor is singing, and Barbara's like, "What's that awful noise?" And the Doctor says, "That's no way to talk about my singing." She says, "No, not that awful noise. The other awful noise."
The other awful noise.
That was so funny.
No, it's great. Like, you definitely get the impression these characters have bonded and actually, like, had a long time together, which is nice, because even earlier this season we were struggling to get that impression, especially from the Doctor with Ian and Barbara at times, where he was very like 50-50 on if he was actually being nice to them or not.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a bit about the planets here too, though, and like the different people they encounter. I forget the names, but the first planet they land on, this desert planet, these
Iridius is what it is.
These people,
and then Iridians are the people.
The Iridians are interesting. I guess is the best way to put it. They're very, I don't want to say they're conflict averse, but they're definitely conflict averse. Like they definitely are a bit weird how they're like, oh, let us help you. Actually, never mind. You're now our prisoners, so you have to do what we say because the elders demand it. It's like, well, aren't you in the middle of dealing with something else entirely here?
Yeah. I also liked how like the Doctor says like we shouldn't go with you because the Daleks will come and kill all of you.
Yeah.
And then the Daleks come and they're like, well, now we have to hold you prisoner because they told us to.
It's like, that's
so they shouldn't have gone down there.
He was worried about, yeah. Like, he literally said that'll happen. You said, no, that won't happen. Well, guess what?
Exact same thing happened.
Yeah. I did really like the set design of like the underground city, though. Like, especially when they were like held prisoner. Like, something about that room looked really interesting. It kind of reminded me of like set designs for the old horror movies.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it was like all the winding staircases in different directions, but something
it's
about
also interesting. Just, you get a lot of good sets in this serial, even though they had like no money to make any of them because they had to make so many of them.
Yeah. It's true. Like, even the ship is actually like pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah.
Like, could it have been better? Yeah, but for a scene that's only like at most 10 minutes long, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah. And then at the end of the first episode, we have a cliffhanger very similar to Dalek Invasion of Earth, where you have rising out of sand instead of water, and then it was grunting very weirdly.
It's so weird. I don't know what's with the weird Dalek noises in this serial, but it's really in this entire serial, but it's really funny.
They definitely tried to make this a comedy as well, for sure. You can definitely tell that.
You could tell between the way the Daleks act, Ian and Vicky's interactions. Like they definitely tried. The way they trap the Dalek is also really funny.
Yeah, they're basically playing whack-a-mole with the Dalek.
Basically, it's pretty silly.
And Barbara complains that her cardigan was taken again because it was also taken in the last serial.
Yep, she keeps losing it.
Yep,
she keeps losing it. At least the Doctor has plenty of clothes in the TARDIS, and they as soon as they went in, they basically just had new clothes again.
Yep.
But I think the one we really have to talk about, the scene we really have to talk about in the chase, is when none of them realize they landed in like an amusement park exhibit.
Yeah.
Of this like Horrorland thing. And they had like such scientific explanations, like, oh, we must have landed in like the dark recesses of the human mind, or like the manifestation of millions of people believing like horror stories or wanting to believe horror stories made this little like pocket dimension exist. And it's like, you know what? That's a cool idea. No, it's an amusement park exhibit, and that's why the animatronics were immune to the Dalek weaponry.
Apparently, Terry Nation wanted it to be like the explanation that they gave, and then Verity Lambert said, no, we're not doing that. Oh. So that's why it was a theme park instead.
Yeah.
You could kind of tell that it was that, though, because like the actor playing Dracula is like very obviously trying to be a robot.
Yes. Yes.
You could kind of tell.
Yeah, you could tell. He's more so for scares and to interact with people as opposed to actually a person there.
Terry Nation wanted it to be like a thing from the recesses of the human mind, though. And Verity Lambert said that was too weird for Doctor Who.
Nowadays, it actually would have fit in perfectly. It's a really funny thing.
Yeah.
Like, to look at season 2 of Doctor Who and they have a scene with Frankenstein and Dracula, and it's like, wait, maybe having the goblins in the newest season isn't that weird after all. But
yeah,
that's not what they did. It's a shame.
It's so funny too, though, because Frankenstein's monster, when he's in the basement, he's just wearing bandages.
Yep.
And then he changes clothes. He goes to the lobby and changes clothes all along the way. And then he beats up a Dalek, which was very funny to see.
It was really
he just
funny.
Picks it up and throws it.
It was really funny seeing him beat up the Daleks and seeing the Daleks terrified of what's happening. But if it's just like a horror exhibit, why? Why is he actively beating them up? That's going to get you shut down if you're doing that to just random attendees.
Yeah. I think in like a novelization or something, they mentioned like, yeah, they got in big trouble for that. Because they were very dangerous.
I see. So that's why it was like a closed exhibit.
Yeah, probably.
They were too dangerous, the animatronics. It's Five Nights at Freddy's and Doctor Who.
Pretty much.
I hate that I said that,
also,
but that's the only way you can make that one make sense.
Also, in the novelization, they also established that Morton Dill gets locked up in a rehab clinic. He's the guy from the Empire State Building.
That's so funny.
Because people show up and he's just like hitting the floor, and he's like, well, he must be insane.
He must be insane. Make sure he doesn't jump off the top of the building, they said. And that's it.
Yeah, they even had a joke about that at the beginning, which is so weird.
Like
the tour guide's like, it took us like 5 minutes to get up here. If you want to go down, it only takes about 30 seconds, but we don't recommend that.
Maybe don't advertise.
I don't think you're a good tour guide. That's not a good tour guide.
Different time and place, I suppose. But after the horrors, although actually no, before leaving the horrors, I just want to say Barbara gets sucked into like the back room area where like falling into the trap door. Shouldn't she have realized it's all a fake exhibit at that point then? Especially since they didn't dwell on her coming back at all. They're just like, oh, look, she and Vicky are back now. Oh, okay. Shouldn't they have known what this place was then?
I guess. I don't know. Also, to go back to the ship, it was also a bit interesting because like that's like an actual real life ship where everybody just disappeared.
Yeah, they even mentioned that it was like, oh yeah, it was this ship, and Barbara's like, wait, it was that ship? That was the name?
Yeah. There's also we see a baby die because a woman jumps off with a baby in her hands.
Yeah.
And then the Dalek falls off, though. The Dalek falling off was very funny.
The Dalek falling off was really funny. I don't get that. The way they defeated some of the Daleks one by one in these different areas was really funny.
Yeah. The Daleks did also call it the Earth Time Machine as well, which is curious.
Mm-hmm. The TARDIS, specifically?
Like, I guess, yeah, they call the TARDIS the Earth Time Machine. Like, where's the Earth Time Machine?
Yeah, and the humans and all, which...
I guess technically they don't know yet.
Yeah.
Is the plot point.
Well, I guess technically they also weren't sure.
Yeah.
They weren't sure where they were going to have the Doctor come from, because I think at this point it could still be that the Doctor and Susan are from a future Earth. They hadn't 100% known yet.
Yeah. Like the novelization of this was also made I think 2 decades later.
Oh wow.
So there was also a funny moment in it where the Daleks mention that the Doctor has changed faces multiple times, but he hasn't.
It's the first Doctor. Well, yeah.
As far as we knew at that point in time, he hadn't changed faces yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that might have just been a mistake on the writer's part, considering the whole plot point is that they don't actually know anything about the Doctor yet.
Yeah, I think that was more so of, because he said it was 2 decades later, at that point the actual actor for the Doctor had, and they just assumed it just happens, it's just normal. Everyone knows that at this point. But
it's as we will see later in this same serial, the plot point is that they only know the Doctor from what they previously had.
Yep.
Because they think Susan's supposed to be here.
Yep. And let's talk a bit about that too. The way they spend the rest of the time on this other planet. This, I don't even know how to describe this planet. This fungi planet. This jungle planet.
Yeah, it's called Mechanus is what they call it.
Yeah, Mechanus. But it's not very mechanical for the most part.
It has carnivorous fungi.
Carnivorous fungi.
They're tree-sized.
And a very large jungle. And then there's the remnants of what was supposed to be an Earth colony or a human colony.
Yeah. But it is also interesting how, Vicky accidentally gets left behind.
Yeah.
And then she just stumbles her way into the Dalek time machine, and then it's all fine.
Thankfully. Because She would have been stuck in an amusement park otherwise, and who knows what time.
Also, the amusement park, according to the novelization, the robots were made by Microsoft.
Oh,
but Microsoft didn't exist at the point in time where the episode actually aired. So it was a funny little detail to add.
Well, later on. Mean, we don't know what year it was in, I think, so they could have just been set in the future.
Yeah.
But that's rather funny. I think...
Yep.
So Vicky getting trapped there and then stowing away on the Dalek ship, somehow not getting found by them, and being the one to learn of the Daleks' plan, because I guess they were tired of just chasing them. We're gonna make a robotic clone of the Doctor to go and kill them. Interesting thing to do when you don't really know that much about your enemy.
Yeah. I guess this is building off of the Robomen, though, is where now they can just make robot people.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting that this is definitely the Daleks after Dalek invasion of Earth kind of thing. Like they've now dealt with the Doctor several times. He's known in their records, and they hate him.
Yeah. I
think the robot Doctor was kind of funny because when you first see him, that's definitely not William Hartnell.
Yeah. It's definitely funny looking at it. I assume old-timey TVs, it'd be a bit less obvious.
Especially since he's doing the voiceover, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he voices over everything except for there's like one line where they forgot to do a voiceover where he just says like no.
Yeah.
And you can clearly tell it's not William Hartnell saying that one line.
Yep. But it's interesting how the Daleks supervise the robot going out and then just kind of leave it to its own devices, and then it fails to actually beat them. Because it wasn't equipped with any way to kill them. He was just starting to swing his cane around. Alright, I guess. I thought maybe it would have been stronger or it would have had like a weapon attached, but...
I did like that whole sequence, though, where it's like... The reason why Ian thinks the Doctor is the robot is because the Doctor gets very violent.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's true. No, and then the robot's over with Vicky and Barbara, and so it's like, Susan, be careful. And that's the thing that makes him lose.
That's the tell. And I think that's pretty cool. That's actually pretty nice that they did that.
Yeah, it's a neat little detail there. Although it's so funny, though, that the Doctor being violent is what made Ian think incorrectly.
Yeah, because he's acting out of character, too.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, though, that this whole time, I guess the Daleks had not picked up on that's not Susan, that's Vicky. And they didn't program that into the robot.
Well, I think it's probably just the robot was probably just programmed with like their records.
Yeah,
and probably wasn't really given any new information.
That's true.
And the records just said it was supposed to be Susan.
yeah, I guess so. But it's kind of interesting how built up that was, and then how once they actually had a confrontation, how quickly it went down. And they immediately moved on to the next point of let's enter the colony.
And the Doctor beats it so easily by just like reaching into its chest and pulling out wires,
which is also like, kind of violent.
It's also funny though, because it's like it would have been very easy to figure out which one was the robot if it just has wires that you can very easily grab.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. It would
probably
been...
like I guess it didn't have like skin maybe, and it just had clothes over top of it, and it was just easy to grab. I don't know.
Surely it would have been a little bit
not
more
a very well made robot.
That it's a robot. Yeah. But let's talk a bit about this human colony, or the only human in this colony.
The mechanoid colony.
Yes, the mechanoid colony, which was very strange. Very strange. I wasn't a fan of how these robots were speaking. Just the way they were. I don't know how specifically you were watching it, but I noticed watching it off of BritBox, the subtitles were kind of failing for the robots. It was not really detecting them as speech.
Yeah. I did also like, though, when Susan imitates them, which is...
Oh, and Vicky imitates funny.
Them? Vicky. Vicky imitates them, and then they're like, no, don't do that. And that's rude.
It was kind of funny. It caught me off guard that she did that. But I also find it funny how they're like, enter. Oh, what was it? It was like, enter, 0, stop. And then Ian's like, what does it mean? And Barbara looks at him and she just repeats it. She's like, obviously. She's like, wow, all right. Yeah, that's sure. Why not? Yeah. And then we meet English astronaut Steven Taylor. Or I think English. I actually, I don't know. Human astronaut. I'll say human astronaut.
Little fun fact about him.
Yeah.
You know, Morton Dill was played by the same actor as Steven Taylor.
Oh, really?
Which it doesn't really, you don't really notice that because he has a beard as Steven Taylor and he didn't as Morton Dill.
Mm-hmm.
But it is funny because it's not exactly established here, but Steven Taylor stays with them, and he is our next companion.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's surprising that was not actually made apparent. As far as the Doctor and everyone else knew, they thought he, like, burned in the building. That was... they thought he, like, went back in and didn't come back out. So, the fact that he's apparently going to be with us next is a little surprising.
This is the first time, though, where we have... an actor play a companion after having played a different character, and it's also, I believe, the only time where he played a different character in the same story.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Very funny.
That definitely doesn't happen.
It was weird, though, at the end when he's stumbling through the forest. Like, you could have just had him stumble into the TARDIS.
Yeah, that would have made more sense.
That would have shown us that he's sticking around.
I guess
maybe they hadn't fully decided yet if he was going to be the companion. Maybe.
Well, I mean, I don't know, because I mean, when they were filming this, that shouldn't they have actually known that by this point?
I assume they probably would have.
Because this wasn't the end of the season, so like there wasn't a break. But
yeah, I guess it depends, like what the production blocks were.
Yeah,
like,
that's
all
true.
That. You never know.
It's hard to say. But I guess the zoo exhibit that he was in for several years was rather odd.
Yeah.
But this poor guy all on his own this whole time. And the way they escape is kind of funny because ultimately I don't want to say they don't deal with the Daleks. They don't directly deal with the Daleks. The Doctor just kind of leaves a bomb for them. And then they realize, the whole place is coming down. That's not good.
Yep. And then the Mechanoids had a fight scene with them. Just interestingly filmed, I would say.
Lots of explosions and fire was kind of all we really saw.
And apparently they never bring back the Mechanoids because the suits that the people were in were so terrible and very difficult to move around. They were too big to go through doors and stuff, so
I can believe it.
They didn't really want to bring them back.
Yeah, that's kind of a problem. That definitely makes it hard to, utilize them.
Yeah. There were also a couple notes I had here that I wanted to mention for stuff we already passed.
Yes,
where,
let's do that.
In the chase, they actually used some Dalek props from the Doctor Who movies.
Oh,
where they bought them, which is also funny because this is the first time these Dalek props were seen, because this came out before the movie, but it was made after. Like they bought them from it, and then they refurbished them a bit to make them look a bit closer to theirs.
Okay,
so that was why they could have more Daleks there than they would before.
That's okay. I see. That makes sense.
And then there was also the Beatles cameo that I mentioned was just a recording of them at one of their concerts. Originally, the plan was that they were going to show up and they were actually going to record a cameo of them doing their 50th anniversary concert.
Wow!
And they were even totally down to do it, but their manager vetoed the decision.
Aw,
so
that sucks.
We almost got the 50th anniversary Daleks, or Beatles, which would have been sad in hindsight.
Yeah,
but that would have been very funny, especially because the Beatles actually wanted to do it.
Yeah, especially since they wanted to do it, that would have been cool. But
yeah,
oh well, I guess.
Yeah, that was it. There was just fun little trivia things there.
No, I like the trivia. I think that's cool. It's always interesting to learn even more than what we're seeing with the classics. I mean, I like that for even the modern stuff. It's why I'm so happy modern stuff is brought back, like Doctor Who Unleashed. The new version of Doctor Who Confidential. Like, I love the behind the scenes stuff, so it's actually pretty cool to hear about.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I basically I always read wikis when I'm watching stuff, so I've just been writing down trivia notes because I just do that anyways.
I mean, that's fair. That makes it more fun.
Yep.
So the big thing here is that this is when Ian and Barbara leave. This is when they get back home. They steal the Dalek time machine and blow up the Dalek time machine to return to their own time, kind of. Not actually their own time, 2 years out from their own time. I guess they'll figure that one out later. But yeah, this is when Ian and Barbara leave the Doctor. And he's very hostile about it at first. He's very hostile about it at first.
There was also a funny moment, like right before that, where Barbara says, like, Ian, I could kiss you. And the Doctor says, don't waste it on him. Or, no, it was... I think the Doctor says, Ian, I could kiss you. Was it? Barbara says, don't waste it on him.
I think it was something like
Kiss
that.
me instead.
Yeah, it was something like that.
That was a funny little thing.
This is definitely like a funny little interaction.
But yeah, now we're saying goodbye to them. Apparently, it's also established, I think, in the novelization that the Doctor purposefully made it 2 years out just because they have experienced 2 years while on the TARDIS.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Syncing up their timeline.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But they do mention that, like, well, we have to somehow explain how we disappeared for 2 years.
Yeah, and as we mentioned in an earlier episode, they'll also have to explain what happened to Susan since they all disappeared at the same time. And that's not suspicious at all.
They were asking the secretary where she lived before that as well.
Yep.
So that, that's gonna take some explaining for sure.
That doesn't bode well at all.
It was also funny though how, like, their whole sequence there was, I guess it was too expensive to get a video camera out to those locations, so they just took still pictures.
They had a bunch of pictures. It's almost like they were filming like promo pictures for the season or something. Yeah. You just had a montage.
They find a real police box in that, and they're like, "Oh, is that TARDIS? Nope, it's not. Never mind."
It was just so funny how it all started with like still pictures of pigeons, and I was like, "Yeah, hello," and then it led into like the actual montage of more of them. I'm like, "Oh, okay, they just took pictures of pigeons for some reason."
Yeah,
I mean, it was nice to see them having a good time, and like, "Oh my gosh, we're back home."
And when they get on the bus, they're like, "That was so fun." Like, hanging out with pigeons was fun. I guess it's a lot simpler than what you've been doing for the last 2 years. So yeah. I guess that makes sense.
It's just enjoying the fact that you're back home. You can live life again normally.
And then it's kind of difficult to understand, but then they have a joke about, I guess, bus fares have gone up in those 2 years.
Bus fares have gone up, yep.
And that's how they end. And then the Doctor is watching this all on the time and space visualizer, and he says, "I will miss them."
The time and space visualizer would be a great way.
It wasn't even really acting, because William Hartnell had genuinely become friends with them. And he will miss them.
Yeah. 100%. And you could tell, like, that definitely you felt it there. That was genuine.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a nice ending for them.
It is.
Where they just get to go home.
It didn't feel out of nowhere. It didn't feel out of nowhere like it didn't feel like it was only established in the serial, like Susan's.
Yeah.
We've been building up to this for a while. I mean, they constantly bring up the, getting us back home deal. And pretty much anytime they argue with the Doctor, it comes back up of like, oh, we want to get back home someday, sometime.
Yeah. And then they get another time machine, so they just want to use it.
Yep.
Even though the Doctor says there's a 50-50 chance you might die.
It's like, well, they want to take the risk.
They took their chances.
Yeah.
Because they don't know if they ever will have a chance.
Exactly. I would say, and I don't blame them for taking it, because they've taken so many risks on their 2 years of adventures, which is kind of wild to think about, because they were companions to the Doctor in real time for them, and actually that long, for longer than some other companions, I feel like. Some companions, it's real Earth time, or when they are sent back, it's that amount of time. But in terms of how long they themselves were actually with the Doctor, it's usually kind of ambiguous.
Yeah.
First pair of companions being there for 2 years of their lives, even though we don't actively see all of those 2 years, In fact, it kind of feels like comparatively we see maybe a few weeks because so many episodes lead straight into each other that we only see maybe a few weeks in total. It's fascinating to learn that it's been 2 years of travel for them, which then explains why after Susan, they really kind of did start changing up how they act with the Doctor.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it's really interesting, I think.
I do also want to mention, the soundtrack for this serial was very upbeat.
It was.
Which felt very weird.
It was.
It felt very weird for Daleks.
It felt far more like positive and goofy and fun than serious, which kind of leads into what we were saying the whole time too.
They definitely wanted to do a Dalek comedy, I feel.
So which is weird when you think about it, but I mean, I guess we just had
especially because it's their third. It's the third Dalek story, and it's a comedy.
How was this received, out of curiosity, if you found that in the wikis? Like, what was the reception to this serial?
I didn't find anything about this one. I know Space Museum is, like, widely hated.
Okay.
It's, like, one of the least favorite episodes of Doctor Who ever, I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure about this one, though.
Okay.
I feel like this is kind of towards the end of Dalek Mania, though. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like, well, especially next season, there's a 12-part episode with them, so they're definitely starting to overuse them a little bit. And it started to wane interest, I think.
Yeah. Especially when they're kind of less fearsome in this serial, to be honest. They're determined, but they're not very fearsome. They're more silly. And that will affect perception.
Yeah.
So, question for you, then. Now that we've seen all of Ian and Barbara, they are no longer the companions. I mean, outside of, like, you know, extra material, like spin-offs and audio stories and novelizations and whatnot. How did you like them as companions?
I quite like them. I feel like they definitely really helped with, like, understanding everything when you have a history teacher and a science teacher.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a very good dynamic to have there. And, like, the two of them work very well together as well. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, they're not exactly a romance, but you can tell that, like, later in their lives, they do become one. Mm-hmm. Like, you can definitely feel that, and I feel like it's very good, well hinted at times, that there's, like, a bit more between them.
Yeah, especially later into the season.
Yeah, especially, like, in the Romans, they definitely felt.
Mm-hmm.
You could feel it there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, I completely agree with the way their teachers impacting all this. Like, Barbara, the history teacher, has a lot more to say and do in history stories, and Ian, the science teacher, kind of picks up on the sciencey sides of things when applicable. I do think I liked them better as companions after they were more focused on wanting to go home and not really sure what to do in the first season. Like, once they really stepped up and established, like, their strong points, I really liked the roles they played. And especially Barbara, because I think once Ian stopped feeling like the protagonist and instead just a capable companion, I think that was his strong suit in terms of, like, that his character felt best defined. But I think any time Barbara had a good spotlight on her and she wasn't treated as a damsel, she did a fantastic job.
Yeah, she definitely did.
And the amount of things that she did was great.
They were definitely a very good TARDIS team, I think.
Agreed.
It's going to be interesting to see how it changes without them.
Yeah, we're going to have a whole dynamic shift now, because now there's only going to be 3 people in the TARDIS in total.
Yeah. I will also say that in Season 3, they go through companions very quickly.
Oh, boy.
So, like, we're going to have so many companion changes next season.
Oh boy, we got that to look forward to, I guess.
Vicky leaves towards the beginning, and then a replacement comes in, and then leaves in the next serial.
Oh, okay.
And then I think we're with just Steven for, like, a serial or 2. Mm-hmm. And then we have Dodo Chaplet come in somewhere along there, and then by the time the first Doctor regenerates, it's Ben and Polly with him. So it's like, we're going through, like, 4 different TARDIS teams next season.
Wow. That's going to be weird.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see how that goes when we get there, I suppose. But at the very least, the longevity of Ian and Barbara was nice, and I liked getting their character interactions with everything else going on and the different situations they found themselves in.
It's worth noting that obviously we do eventually see Ian in Power of the Doctor way later. Barbara never returns. However, Jacqueline Hill does return in a Fourth Doctor serial.
Really?
As a completely unrelated character. So we will get to that eventually.
Wow. Okay.
She just gets cast as like a random backer or like a random character in a Fourth Doctor story. So we will see her again, but not as Barbara. And I don't know if they mention that she looks the same.
They probably don't, but I'm curious if we'll pick up on like recognizing her. With like if we don't look into it that much. If we like just when we get to Fourth Doctor, just a reminder of like, hey, at some point we might see her. And then let's see if we pick up on her.
After this, she retired for like 15 years or like 13, I think, where she raised a family and then eventually she went back into acting. And that was when she got recast on Doctor Who as a character in a Fourth Doctor story.
That's fun.
Unfortunately, she did pass away in the 90s from cancer, though.
Yeah.
William Russell is still with us, but apparently his health is not very good these days.
I mean, he's also apparently he's like 99 now, isn't he?
Yeah. When they were filming Power of the Doctor, he has dementia, so he really couldn't do much.
Yeah.
So
that's why he only had like 1 or 2 lines.
Yeah. I think he only had one line where it's just like, what do you mean her? And that was his only line.
Yeah. You can't really make him do much more than that, honestly.
He has done audio stories, though. Like, I think a decade ago, he was doing a bunch of audio stories for Big Finish.
That's nice.
So there is a lot more with him.
It's nice to see the people involved in Doctor Who, like even like from back then, still wanted to do more with it.
Yeah. Barbara does appear in Big Finish, but Big Finish started after Jacqueline Hill had already passed away.
So it's not her. It's not the same actress. But...
She was voiced by Carol Ann Ford in a couple stories where, like, if Susan was in the story, they just had her do it, and then Maureen O'Brien, who plays Vicky, also voiced Barbara in stories where Vicky was there.
Okay.
And then I think nowadays, it's all of their actors from Adventure in Space and Time do those characters.
It's all of them doing those characters now. Because they're the ones that also make like the cover art for it, or appear on the cover art.
Yeah.
Or the promo art, I should say.
It is nice that they basically just gave them all those roles.
It is nice. It is nice, and I want a modern Doctor Who story where they run into not just the first Doctor before he regenerates, but the first Doctor with Susan, Ian, and Barbara. You can wipe their memories after, nice. Fine. But I really want to see that because I think that could be really interesting. Although it has been 10 years since they played the role in that movie, so I don't know how well that'll go. But still. But speaking of future things, one thing to keep in mind that I'll toss to you to describe is the Celestial Toymaker, which is a later serial. It's not coming up that soon for us, but it is re-releasing soon. So I'll toss it to you to describe this one a bit.
Yeah, so I think it's June 11th. They are coming out with a Blu-ray for the animated reconstruction of Celestial Toymaker. We will be watching it probably like in August-ish. So if you want to watch it with us, as far as we all know, it's not going to be on any streaming service officially around that time. So you might want to just try to buy the Blu-ray. Because I think even if you're just trying to watch the original, I think there's only one. I think only episode 4 is surviving. So
yeah, there's not many.
You want to get the animated episodes there.
Yeah,
that's like towards the end of season 3, but
it's a ways
we'll be getting
away,
to that.
But for some reason, I thought it was later than season 3, but I guess no. Yeah, that makes sense because it's before he regenerates, but not too close to it. So okay.
Yeah, it's like one of the last ones of season 3, I think.
Yeah, so we'll be getting there sometime over the summer, and with the episode actually re-releasing in a new animated format, it's just the best way to be able to get it. So we're going to be doing that.
It's also good to support that because honestly, I have no idea who's even funding it now, because it used to be BBC America that funded it, but they stopped funding it like early 2023, I think. And this is the second one that has been released after they stopped funding it. So I have no idea who's currently doing it. So
is it
it's probably a good idea for people to buy it.
Yeah, it would be good to support it.
Like, if it had Disney money involved, it would just be on Disney Plus.
That's
so it's
true.
Probably not the current production of Doctor Who. So who knows? I don't know who's doing it. I've tried to look it up and I haven't been able to find anything. So maybe I'll try to look at like the legal section of the Blu-ray when we get it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe that will tell us who's funding it.
That'll be interesting, because then we'll get to see if they're involved in any other animated recreations.
Yeah, but people should definitely buy it, because then they'll know that it's worth continuing to make these.
Yeah, exactly. Again, though, the Toy Maker's not our next episode. It's just it's an upcoming serial that we'll get to over the summer that's coming out soon. But for next episode, our 10th episode, wow, reaching 10, we are going to be finishing season 2. So we'll be watching The Time Meddler, which is 4 episodes. Should be on both Tubi TV and BritBox, or on the BBC iPlayer, depending on where you are, obviously. I think we'll also be talking about season 2 as a whole at that point, since that'll be the end of the season. And that should be a really interesting one.
I just want to ask, do you know anything about The Time Meddler?
I don't actually know anything about it.
Okay. I won't tell you much, but I will say that there's a couple aspects to the story that are very historic in the history of Doctor Who. It's a very important one. I will not tell you how it's important, but it's very important in a couple ways.
So this will be pretty interesting when we do that next then.
Yeah, there will probably be a lot to talk about, I think.
Yeah. Well, as a reminder, if you guys want to join us in the conversations about it, you can follow it, or you can support us on Patreon for $1 a month to get into our Discord. And you'll also get these episodes like right away, as opposed to having to wait for the weekly releases. But if you support us at $5 a month, you'll be able to watch us live as we record these. And we have a little side chat open, and if you guys have any input, if you want to tell us actually Ian and Barbara are the absolute best companions, they've never been topped before, we can have that discussion, thanks to you. So if you support us at $5 a month, you'll be able to talk with us while we record these. And at this point, we typically record these Saturdays at like 12:30 Eastern or so.
Yeah.
But any final thoughts on the Space Museum, The Chase, Ian and Barbara before we wrap it up here, Joy?
I think in general, I haven't really been enjoying these episodes as much as I enjoyed season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these ones have been fine, but season 1 had very good episodes, and I don't really think that we've had like a very good episode in season 2 yet.
I really like Dalek Invasion of Earth, but after Dalek Invasion of Earth, it has kind of been like ups and downs, and I wouldn't say anything exceptional.
Yeah.
But
like, Space Museum had one really good episode, and then 3 that were just kind of okay.
Yeah.
And the Chase was interesting, but it was trying to do Keys of Marinus, but not as well as Keys of Marinus.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. So far, I'm not really sure how I've been feeling about season 2 as a whole. I've liked the episodes, but I don't think I've liked majority of them as much as season 1. But that's a little preview, I guess, of our thoughts on season 2 as a whole, which we'll be going more into next week. Next episode, I should say. We'll be, taking a look back at like all the serials and actually kind of, I guess, comparing it to season 1 and see how we really feel at that point. Because I do think of these two, I think I preferred The Chase more, just because the set design was more interesting and there was more going on. Because I gotta be real, the Space Museum was very bland. It was a bunch of hallways constantly.
Yeah, it was.
Before we fully wrap up, though, now that we talked a bit about episode 10 prep as well, I also want to mention episode 11 prep. We're actually going to be recording that one a bit early, because that's when we talk about season 1, and not the classic season 1, the new season 1. That's when we talk about RTD2 season 1, Ncuti Gatwa, 15th Doctor, Ruby Sunday, that whole season. That's done then. That's going to be recorded on Saturday, June 22nd. So if you want to support us and make sure to hear our thoughts on the brand new season, like right after it finishes, that's going to be a long one and a fun one. And I definitely want to see some of you guys here actually chatting with us about it, because there's going to be a lot to say. There's definitely going to be a lot to say. New season's been interesting.
And you'll also end up getting it very early for early access.
Yes, you'll get it very early for early access. I'm on vacation at the end of June, so our schedule for the end of the month is a little bit shifted instead of our usual every other week.
Yeah.
But the normal releases will still be about the same.
Yeah.
But that's episode 11. So, as a reminder, for next week, which is episode 10, make sure to watch The Time Meddler. You can find that on the BBC iPlayer, or for free on Tubi TV, or if you have BritBox. And if you support us on Patreon for just $1 a month, you can gain access to our Discord, as well as early access to episodes. You could talk about classic with us, or modern with us, just in the Discord. Or for $5 a month, you get to join us live in these discussions in a little side chat. Anyway, I've been Tris. You can find me on social media at ToonTris.
I've been Joy. You can find me at Joy Content.
And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.